Brothers and sisters, welcome back to the channel. I am your Big Brother Yogi, and I'm back. So I know it's been 2 months since I made a video. Life has been lifing, but I have not been idle when it comes to reading. And also, within that time, I've been trying to figure out how I'm going to maneuver with this channel. Um, you know, when I first started this channel, I wanted to have reading schedules. And as you can see through the evolution of these videos, um, things have changed. I had big reading goals. I wanted to be upstairs in the library, and I wanted to just produce. And I realized, like, I need to read what my body is yearning for, and I can't make a reading schedule. Once you see the books that I've read, what I've wanted to read after each book changed. And instead of like forcing myself to read something on a schedule, I change with what I want to read internally. And oftentimes, when you read a book, you want more of that author or you want more of that subject. And so, in the search of satisfaction, in the search of fulfillment, in the search of transcendence and transformation, um, I read what my soul is calling me to read. And that's something that I'm learning while trying to have the videos. I pretty much read what I want anyways, but when I started doing these videos, um, I wanted to keep to a schedule. I wanted to make sure that you guys are staying on par with me and I'm not so sporadic as I normally am. But that's just not me. And I need to be able to roll with the punches. So that's what I'm going to do. The past 2 months, I read 6 books. And these books range, and we're going to go through each one together. And I'm going to give you a short summary of it and how I felt about it. But yeah, it has been quite interesting. And there have been some books that have really stuck with me. And there have been some books that have been very challenging. And I'll point those out. But I mean, listen, let's not waste any more time. Let's get straight to it. All right. So the first book from the last video that I made, it was why physical books are, still reigning supreme over e-readers. But the one before that, I was reading, or I was finishing up The Count of Monte Cristo. And I think I've already showed you, I completed Claire and the Sun right after The Count of Monte Cristo. And this is a very interesting book with the author Ishiguro. And this is my very first book by him. And I really didn't know what to expect. This is my first one. Everyone's telling me that he is sort of like a, somewhat fantasy, somewhat emotional, and and very tragic writer. And so when I was reading this book, I was sort of like, what's going to happen? And this is about a artificial friend, AI friend that was made to support children. And I mean, I don't necessarily think it's for, any specific type of child. This artificial companion um, is for any child. And this was very cute. And Clara, who we meet in the store which sells these dolls, is standing out the window, as sort of like the show window, and she meets a young girl who comes up. And I'm not going to give you too much about it, but she's powered by Clara is powered by the sun. She's solar powered. And there are themes here that are very spiritual. I connected it to those and, you know, religious aspects of this book. I'll be doing a review for each one of these books. So I'll dive deeper into themes and symbolism and everything that I got out of it. So I don't want to get too close into this. Um, but this is a beautiful little story. I did get somewhat emotional at the end. And I was satisfied with the ending. It it was a very cute read. It didn't take me long because I wanted to know what was happening, and I was quite invested in Clara. I wasn't really invested in the other characters. So this was told through the perspective of Clara. Clara is a unreliable narrator. I extremely unreliable and naive, but beautiful and sweet and earnest. So that is Clara and the Sun. After I read Clara and the Sun, Ishiguro is a author that I really wanted to get into, and so I wanted to stay in the Japanese world. And this book that I'm about to show you now was it was a book that I wanted to read for a long time, and one of my friends from work, James, he read this book, and I remember he read it through an e-reader, and he just soldiered through this book, and I was so interested in just like, what is it about this and that, and I waited till he was done, and of course I picked the physical copy, and so that book is Haruki Murakami's 1Q84. And this is a monster of a book. I'm not going to tell you like any lies here. This book follows two characters, a female assassin, Aomame, and a writer who is also a professor or a teacher at a cram school named Tango, who I think had the best story. Now we're jumping back and forth between Tango and Aomame, and this book was a trilogy, but I bought the big one. So in book one and book two, you're jumping from perspectives of Aomame and Tango. Then in book three, you're introduced to another perspective, which I like this. I like this character too, and I enjoyed it. I know some people, they weren't really interested in the third perspective at the end. I thought it was pretty great. Um, I love this book, but there were some. It was kind of repetitive a little bit. So like one thing would happen, like a big, large scene, and something that would be very crucial to the story happened in, say, the perspective of Aomame, and then it was like recapped uh, with Tango in detail. 1Q84 is realistic fantasy, and we're having everyday people because Tango and Aomame are everyday people, but they find themselves in this mystical world. It's sort of parallel to the normal world, though it has two moons, one regular looking moon and then a smaller sort of mossy greenish moon beside it. And there are all types of bizarre happenings in this book. And these two characters, though their lives are mundane, they are being faced with, certain questions on how did they end up here? How do we get out of here? Again, Tango was my favorite character and my favorite perspective. And there are some things in this book that can be challenging for certain people. I know that some people are sort of put off by the sexual aspect of this book, and also some of the obsession with pubic hair. But I enjoyed it, and I was very pleased, and it felt rewarding finishing this book. One, because it's massive, but because my first Murakami book was this beautiful magnum opus, and I did enjoy this, and I think that those who go into this book not trying to rush through it, but to let the time pass, um, in reality when you're reading it. And each day, time is passing in this book. And so you do feel a sense of gradual accomplishment, and sort of like this book is living with you and you are living with it. And that's 1Q84. Again, I will be doing individual deep dive book reviews on every book that I show you, but this one was one of my more enjoyable experiences uh, with these 6 books. So after that, I don't know what sort of came over me, but I wanted to read books to be activated. I wanted to read something a little more challenging. Um, and, everyone knows Cormac McCarthy being arguably one of the greatest American writers. And I haven't read any of his books. So, I wanted to sort of get an understanding on, what it is to read a Cormac McCarthy book, and why do people say it's so challenging. So the first book that I picked up was Blood Meridian. And when I tell you that this experience was more of a, um, this was more of a difficult uphill climb. Not so much that it wasn't enjoyable, but there was so much pretentious wording in this book. Um, I mean, I literally, if I didn't see, if I didn't know a word, I looked it up. I wrote the definition down. Basically, I took this book apart and pieced it back together. There is, Spanish all throughout this book. I looked up what those Spanish passages were, wrote them in this book. This is not a book that you can read once and be like, I've read it. This is a book that you decipher first on the first read, and then you reread it with your notes. So I will be rereading this book sometime, let's just say next year, right? But this book was brutal to read. It was poetic. It was beautifully written, um, but it was very violent. It was really about this one character that we follow, the kid, which I don't even necessarily know, like, is he the protagonist? Um, and he joins a gang that, oh, and this is a Western, by the way. And he joins this outlaw gang that are like little mercenaries going around and scalping anyone really that they can find in the between Texas and Mexico, and mostly the setting is in Mexico, and they're scalping Mexicans, they're scalping Native Americans, and they're going back and they're wreaking havoc on every single town that they go into. It really, there's no hope in this book. And we are introduced to the notorious Judge Holden. who people think is the devil, but I think he is the personification of nihilism. It's based on nihilistic philosophy, and it was difficult to read, both in the deciphering of the book, but also in the brutality. And really, there's not really a plot. They go around, they scalp, they turn those scalps in, and they are just riding. And there is beautiful description of the desert. There's, Judge Holden has very nihilistic but yet beautiful monologue in here. He is the educated one, out of the gang, and it is a very interesting book. And not only that, it made me want to dive deeper in Cormac McCarthy's life, and you know how he came to write the way he did. I mean, there's no quotations in here. The punctuation is a bit bizarre. There is run-on sentences. It's almost as if I'm going to disregard the convention, or the conventional writing techniques, and I'm going to write how I want to do it in this sort of pretentious and poetic, um, writing style. The prose are luscious, and I really, I really enjoyed it, and I was really actually quite pleased with going back to the book and like starting, over, with my deciphering, after each chapter, and translating the Spanish. It was a fun experience. I'm glad I did it. Um, I have pretty much all of his works, so we're going to continue that deciphering, that education. This is these books are a curriculum for me, uh, and I want to be able to continue to sharpen the blade of my mind and stay deadly, in that aspect. We need to always continue to stay the course of education in some way. I feel like once you graduate uni and you get your master's, you should dive deeper into a mental exercise that is going to be fulfilling and transformative for you. Um, and for me, it's literature. So that's Blood Meridian. After that, I was like, look, let me continue on with Cormac McCarthy. That was great. Let me keep on going. So then I read Child of God. This was probably the most disgusting, bizarre. I know I said 1Q84 was bizarre. This was even more bizarre. And, you know, I really, I really didn't even understand, um, why you would write something like this. But this book, we're following a man named Lester Ballard, who, grew up in the mountainous Appalachians of, Tennessee. He's accused of grape, and, he 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 finds himself sort of isolated. And there's some things that happen in this book that push him further towards isolation. Some very heinous acts that I feel, um, were inexcusable, disgusting, bizarre. This person, Lester Ballard, is not a likable character at all. And there was not one point that I felt sympathy for him. I just knew he had to be stopped. He had to be stopped. And this guy, listen, if you have any trigger warnings, and I'm talking about this one hits every single trigger warning there is. Um, be careful reading this. I I read it. I did not really enjoy it whatsoever. I think, you know, besides entertainment, what do you, I mean, and what kind of, how is this entertaining? It was disgusting. It was, but, we read these books to know that, there are people out here who exist like Lester Ballard. And it's very important that I think, in a young age, if you have kids, you need to socialize your kids immediately. They need to be socialized. They need to have friends. They need to be a part of, activities, group activities for people of their age. Isolation and being left to your own sick, twisted, disgusting, relentless mind is dangerous. We all need somebody. So that is that. So after that, I was like, I need to, sort of cleanse the palate. And also, like, this was sort of like a horror, Child of God was sort of horror. And I was like, I kind of want to stay with the horror. But I wanted a classic. So I read Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House, which was some of the most beautiful prose besides Blood Meridian in this next book. I was pleasantly surprised how poetically beautiful this was. Cute. This was a cute book. Some of the characters, um, specifically Eleanor, uh, this childlike protagonist. Also, she's not a reliable narrator as well. Um, this was a cute book. I was not afraid at all. This was not scary. A lot of people like Neil Gaiman and um, Stephen King said this was like the top, of the top when it comes to paranormal experiences in literature. It wasn't scary at all. There was nothing scary about this book. Um, I read this book because of the prose. That's what kept me going. I'm still confused about the house. I'm still confused about, I do believe it's haunted, right? There were certain things that happened in this book that proved that that the house was haunted, but I don't know who was haunting the house, if there was multiple entities in the house. There were a lot of unanswered questions in this book, and um, it was just a weird little pretty book. It was a weird, pretty, um, floral prose. Definitely, there was an atmosphere here, and it was sort of creepy in a sense, very descriptive, but it was not scary at all. So, again, I'm going to do book reviews for each one of these books, but that was that. And now, for the last book that I read these past 2 months was probably um, the best book out of these six. I will also have to say, this wasn't my favorite book out of, 2026. It's definitely top three, but this is probably my favorite author when it comes to writing style, when it comes to description, when it comes to fleshing out characters, when it comes to the psychological, study of the human mind and how we struggle with ourselves. And there is no better representative of someone who chose what they wanted and whom they wanted and was ready to sacrifice everything to obtain this happiness. There's no character that embodies that more than Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. This book was beautiful. I loved every minute of it. There are some long descriptive parts about, like, the politics of farming and the strategy of farming and how to have, the peasants, work on the farms or be employed in the farms, and take pride in their work as if the land was theirs. I found that to be very interesting. I love that part. My favorite character was Levin. Anna Karenina, to me, though the book is called Anna Karenina, she to me is not the main character here. Konstantin Dmitrich Levin is the protagonist, and he is the definition of the good boy. The does everything right. He is honorable. He doesn't compromise his moral beliefs. He is never ever influenced, and he's just a good guy. And I really appreciated his views on life, and it wasn't stagnant. His views on life and mortality and love and family life and the meaning of his life evolved throughout this book. And when I talk about a character being flushed out, I am talking about him. Now, there are other characters, right, who are also flushed out. But when you're talking about a character like Levin, we are looking at how events in his life, decisions he's made, the decisions other people have made, how people treat him. All of this is a constant, real time contributing factor of his growth. And this is another book that you read as your days go by, their days go by, and you are living life with these characters. That is a special thing about these large books, but not just that, character first books. I do believe that Leo Tolstoy is a character first writer. And it was very beautiful. Leo Tolstoy is another person that I wanted to dive deep in their lives. And, I was, looking at, biography documentaries about him. I bought some more of his books, and I want to read his memoirs and all of these things. And this transformation that he goes through as a real human being on this planet is also fascinating. And it's almost like Levin. I do believe Levin was sort of like based on Leo Tolstoy. I think like Levin was his representative in that book. But I'm definitely doing a deep dive book review on Anna Karenina. I didn't read it for all these years, mostly because I thought it was going to be boring, and it wasn't. It was far from. Some people may find some parts of this boring, and some of these people may want to skip the political, conversation on farming and farming strategy. But the book itself is absolutely brilliant. and I suggest everyone, this is a must read before you die. Okay? Well, listen, everyone, there you have it. For 2 months, I haven't made a video, but I have been reading, and I've been reading quality works. All these different books made me feel something different. I experienced them differently, and it really is a beautiful, wonderful hobby, very productive hobby. Reading is, and I encourage everyone to find a book, sit down, get your coffee in your favorite spot, and read away. But as always, like, comment, subscribe, holla back at your boy, and I'm gonna catch you next time.